So when you're thinking about reading, I think a good discussion beforehand on the topic really eases people into then reading the material about it. Particularly if during that discussion, you're aware of the keywords in the reading text, and when those words come up in the discussion, you highlight them on a whiteboard, or so people have already really seen some of the keywords that are in the reading text. Sometimes that might mean if a student says something as like connection, but the word in the text is affiliation, that you might reframe what that student has said. So if they say connection, you might then say, oh yeah, another word for that is affiliation. And you'd put that up, you write that up somewhere. So they are already familiar with the word that they're going to see in the piece of reading. Firstly, I would kind of measure the amount of reading text I would do in a session. But the other thing I've kind of learned is that especially if a group are only starting off learning together, that I'd read aloud myself. I kind of feel that if a tutor reads the piece aloud first, then it mediates the meaning for them. You kind of can paste the different sentence structures, the different phrases, and often that allows people access the text more easily. Of course, it also means that no one is worried that they're going to be asked to read. As the learning group get to know each other better, and as they obviously become more comfortable and will volunteer to read, but sometimes a tutor reading aloud helps understanding, especially if it's the first time that they've seen a paragraph or a piece of text. It's often then useful to ask students to read silently and to give them tips like active reading tips. They would be things like highlighting key ideas in the text, maybe taking out a key word and pushing it to the side, a word that maybe they feel sums up what that paragraph is about. I often say to students, please, as you're reading this paragraph, underline any words you don't understand. And we'll discuss those at the end, after the few minutes of them reading it silently. So they're the kind of tips I would give to students. Sometimes, depending on the group, the level of the group as you get to know it, I find that I would summarise my material, or even, I don't like using the word simplify, but maybe include in the material if the word, for example, to retain was in it. So I'm going back to the Erickson example. So he would say adolescents sometimes retain their parents' values and reject others. That word retain is a challenge for a lot of the learners I'm working with at PLC level. So I would often have keep or retain. So I would include in the text a word that explains retain, but a little bit more simpler, or a more common word that they might, know more easy than retain. So I'd often work on texts like that, key texts like that, trying to just simplify them for the learner, but at the same time giving them access to the kind of words that they need to know.